Hi, I'm Andrew Scheps. I'm a mixer, producer, engineer. I've been very lucky to be in the right place at the right time on a lot of records. Managed to win Grammys for my work on Adele's 21 and Red Hot Chili Peppers Stadium Arcadium, which I'm awfully proud of. This studio is called Pad West, and now my standard credit is mixed by Andrew Scheps at Pad West, Van Nuys, California.
I've seen the dawning of the age, Mr. Rose. I'm just years before my time. I played the game.
As we go down the list of these records, they're all very different, and I'm always looking for the kind of power and explosion that you would get from a punk track. So Adele, I sent the mixes to Adele when we finished. She's like, oh, well, here's an email address, send them to Adele. And then the album came out, and 4 of the mixes were on there. You can never know that something is going to be as successful as that. Red Hot Chili Peppers, yeah. I mean, I've been really lucky. I've worked on the last 3 records with them. Mixing Jay-Z 99 Problems, I wasn't aware at all of how huge that song was. I had no idea. But as it turns out, for my kids, that's the one where their friends finally think that their dad's cool. I'm a big believer in the balance should work, especially if I'm mixing something that was cut with live musicians. So I'm always trying to get back to that point where it sounds like a record, but works like a rough mix. Behind me is one of my magnificent Neve 8068 desks. These are obviously a huge part of everything I do with the Flying Faders automation. Then there is the behemoth rack of outboard gear. EQ-wise, the Neve is obviously pretty genius. If I had to pick one EQ, it would be a 1073. The 1073 is probably the classic mic pre and EQ in recording history. The plugin we've done, I think, captures the equalization really, really well. It sounds just like a 1073 to me. We've had the added bonus of finding a little-known band, a 10K mid-range band that was used on the 1078. We also spent a lot of time making sure that it broke the way a 1073 would break. If you push it hard, you get distortion, and does that distortion sound right? And we spent a lot of time making that distortion correct and useful. And then also brought in one element of a lot of the stereo processing plugins now, where if you use a stereo version of the 1073, you can decide to EQ mid-side as opposed to left-right, which works into a lot of people's workflows these days who do a lot of mid-side processing, and not to have to decide the EQ before you encode or after you decode. You can actually put it in as part of the process. I think that we've done a pretty good job of making this plugin act the way I'm used to when I reach for the hardware.